welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's TruFleet presentation. My name is Jeff Smith, and I'm going to take you through TruFleet. We'll do a few slides, explain a couple things, and then we'll get into a demo for you. A couple of housekeeping things. Everyone is muted, just makes life easier on this. And so if you need to have any questions, please type those questions. They'll go directly to our technical team, and we'll answer those questions at the end of the session. And this session is also being recorded, so you can go back and see it or share it with other people that maybe weren't able to join. So for those of you that don't know us, haven't worked with us before, we are Teldio. We were founded in 2008, and we work directly with Motorola in the application development program. That's how we got our start in Motorola, and that's what we continue to do. So we actually have a suite of 10 applications, all sorts of different things. We like to think of those applications as turning radios into smart radios, and what we're going to do today is talk about TruFleet. TruFleet is AVL product, AVL and fleet management. So, you know, it runs the gamut. I know that almost everyone on the call has probably sold some form of GPS fleet management product, and that's what TruFleet does. It works on a web browser, so it's not a console, if you will. It can work on any web browser, and it's able to scale down from all the way from an 80-inch monitor in a transportation center down to a desktop screen, a tablet, or even a mobile phone. So the architecture of this is our server sits on the customer's property and connects to the repeater via wireline or control stations, and we track the turbo radios, and that information is fed through the repeater or the control stations. One very important thing I want to mention in this is if you're doing GPS, you need data channels or data repeaters. That is a requirement, and you can find it in the Motorola System Planner, but here's the basics. You can use a voice channel if you have 20 or less users. Otherwise, you need dedicated data slots or repeaters, because with that much data, you'll actually lock up the system. So in conventional mode, you can have data slots. So it could be just one slot on a repeater. In trunked mode, since there's not really the concept of you can't dedicate a slot in a trunked system, you actually need a full repeater, and then you set up the data repeaters in conventional mode. I know that's always one of the things that people ask is about the data requirements, and then what does that mean from an update? And this is again from the System Planner. You look at the reporting rate and the update interval. The update interval divided by the reporting rate equals the users on a data slot. I actually made a handy spreadsheet cheat sheet so I can plug everything in by the number of users and the number of slots, and then we can figure out what your update interval will be. You can see an easy one down there. So you can work backwards and say how many slots to get 60 seconds, or if we just want one slot and we're doing regular GPS, how many seconds is the update interval? So you can do it either way. Enhanced GPS, you can see, speeds up the updates and can actually help you cut down on the number of data slots or repeaters that you need. One thing, we'll talk about Sprite in a minute, but if you're using Sprite, either the firmware or the Sprite box, that's an alternative to GPS. So we actually give you lots of updates, but there at the regular reporting intervals, and it's not compatible with enhanced GPS, just to note that. So TruFleet is started as an AVL, and then once Motorola started supporting iBeacons with the E-Series radios, we added indoor positioning as well. So we can do both indoor and outdoor positioning. We do the indoor positioning again with the iBeacons. Now, one thing to understand if you're doing indoor positioning is the data requirements are just the same as if it's outdoor GPS. So don't think that because you're doing indoor positioning, you don't have to follow those data requirements. To the radio, it's exactly the same. It's location data, and it doesn't matter if it's indoors or outdoors. You still need to pass that through a data repeater. Lots of reporting features. That's important to a lot of people, is because a lot of people aren't necessarily doing real-time tracking and watching vehicles as they move throughout the day. They want to go back and look at reports of who was where, how long were they sitting, were they speeding, things like that. And I'll take you through those reports in a minute to show you all of the different options that you have. So Sprite, I talked about this earlier. Sprite box is something that a lot of people are familiar with. So now we actually have the ability with the built-in option board on the 5000 series mobiles and the 7000 series portables to use that Sprite functionality on the option board. What the Sprite functionality is updates as low as 10 to 15 seconds. So what's going to happen is let's call it 10 seconds, every 10 seconds, the system's going to take a snapshot of where you are. And then at your update interval, if we say it's 2 minutes, it's going to compress all of those snapshots and send them as one update. And then when it shows up, you're going to have 12 different points and 12 different lots of data from the last 2 minutes. Hopefully that makes sense. It also allows you to do different reports because of the extra data. It also has IOs built into it, so you can track things like plow up, plow down, lights on or off, if the stop arm is out on a school bus, things like that. The other thing is it also has store and forward. So if you have vehicles that either for some reason can't send a GPS update, it will store that and send it on the next successful one. Or if you have vehicles that are going outside of the radio coverage area, it can hold that data for up to a month outside the network and then send it all when it gets back into the network. And again, we can do that with the hardware of the Sprite or on the option board. One other thing we introduced this year is the ability for parents to track their child's school bus. And this is an app, this is a website that the customer would be in charge of. Parents would sign up on there, and they note their name, their student's name, and what bus they want us to be able to watch. And then the school is able to look and verify that that person is who they say they are, and then that person would have access to their child's bus. Now you'll see we get in all the different things we can do from a history perspective and things like that. The parents would only have a view only of the current location. They wouldn't have the historical data. They would just have a view only of the current location, and the current location based on the update interval. So obviously it's going to be depending on the system every 1 to 5 minutes. Again, everyone's familiar with most everyone's familiar with AVL. Lots of different use cases out there, and we see a bunch of different ones. Certainly big in schools, in utilities, manufacturing, all sorts of different things out there. Here is our information if you didn't grab it on the front. And we're actually going to go now into the demo, which will show you a whole lot more than that did. just a second. So hopefully you can see, this is the TruFleet login screen. And you just go to, I'm signing in. Now, keep in mind that this is a simulation. So we don't have vehicles that are running around 24/7 for us. It would be nice, but it's kind of hard to convince people to drive 24 hours. So this is a simulation, and it's actually based around our headquarters in Ottawa. And so that's actually here, you can see that. All right, so hopefully that makes it a little bit easier to see. So when you come in, this is what I think really makes TruFleet great, is the UI. It's very easy to use, it's very intuitive. So starting over here, you've got your zoom in, zoom out, as you would expect. There's a geo search. I'll get to all of these things in a minute, but the other thing is choosing your maps. So we're on the OpenStreetMap standard, which, you know, is very consistent, very easy to see. And then as you move through, you can see there's all sorts of different icons on the screen. And so you're able to go in and make points of interest anywhere you want. And what you can do, how you do that is you just click on the point of interest. You can plop it down there. You give it a name. You have a large number of icons to choose from. I'll do the rocket. You can color it. And then you actually can say which fleets that belongs to. So now you have this point of interest. So when you click on it, you see the name. You can edit the settings, and you can even delete it if you wanted to. Another thing you may have noticed is the clustering. So we cluster the icons. So think of it as when a school bus returns to the school and you have 20 school buses, you don't want to see 20 icons. So we actually cluster all those that are together. Now, if you click on the cluster, it will tell you who is in that cluster. See, when I clicked on that one, it zoomed into the 2 school buses. Moving over here to the right, you can see the different fleets. And that's important for, say, a school system that has a number of different schools, and the main transportation person wants to be able to see all the fleets, but each school's only going to want to see their fleet. So you can sort them that way and have different fleets, or you can have them all together, because you have the ability to search anytime you want for a certain device, either by, if you're doing them by name or by radio ID. So I know that, see, once I started typing, it goes just to the ones that are there, as you can see. And then within the list, you see the different colors. Now the red means it's not currently getting updates. The green means it's online. And the green halo around it means that it's got a good GPS signal. And with that, you can see, when I hover over it, it's actually the number of updates received since I logged on. Now, if you click the plus, you get a few different things you can do. You can center on the map, you can follow on the map, add it to favorites, send a GPS request. So if, you know, if, let's say you're doing 5-minute updates and you want, and it's only been a minute, but you want to see where that vehicle is now, and it swings right to that. So, and you can see that it's a GPS request versus the last point. was a periodic. So that's the scheduled update. One other thing you can do if you're looking at fleets, again, thinking about a fleet of trucks maybe for a utility, you can actually click on what looks like the map icon, from your phone, and it will center the entire fleet on the map. So you can do that with either one. You see how it zoomed right to that. One other thing that I really like is bookmarking locations. So you can see that here. Now the bookmarked locations are on actually a computer specific. So if you're using your computer, you can set your own bookmarks for locations. What I mean by bookmarks is the ability to go to a different view. So I have one called neighborhood, which is that neighborhood right there. And it allows you to go back to that. So it could be over a certain school, a certain substation, a certain warehouse, to get you right back to that view to see what's around it. So I've got a couple more. So one I call zoom out, which is obviously the whole map zoomed out. And then you can see if I swing over here somewhere out of the way, it's very easy to get back to that neighborhood view. Again, that just makes it so much easier for everyone to use. Also up here is the displayed fleets. So I've taken off a couple of them because I don't need to see them. You can see that there's in here, there's none of them even on there, so I don't even need to bother. One thing you may have noticed also is the label text here. So you can see we've got the name and then actually the speed it's going. It makes it very easy to see. That's all something you can do in settings. So we go up to settings. So that's where you can enable icon clustering, like we talked about earlier. And then this is the label script. So you can see that we have the R for device name, the S for speed, and then I've actually put in the word speed, so it's much easier. You can take out the word speed and it'll just show the miles per hour or kilometers per hour without having the word in there. Another thing you have is emergency alerts. So if someone presses the emergency button, you have the option to follow that, to immediately follow that person on the map and play an alert sound until it's acknowledged. Now you may have noticed that down here we keep having some geofence alerts. That is very similar to what the emergency alert would look like, but it actually plays a chime and stays on the screen until you click acknowledge on the emergency alert. So now digging down into the radios, when you click on the icon, you can see all of the information. So we talked about IOs. So this one actually shows the IO state, which is that the door is closed. It's actually stopped right now. And it shows you using reverse geocoding this street address rather than just the latitude and longitude. And then when you click on the label, that's when you get the same map that we saw over here. So you can center on map, follow on map, leaves it in the center of the map and will move the map as that vehicle moves. So if you want to track, and there's a last bus coming into school and you want to track that one vehicle, you can do follow on map and watch it all the way in. And I'm going to stop following. Another thing you can do is do a route replay. So you can do a route replay for the last 24 hours. Now, again, this is where the simulation comes in because This is just simulated data, but you see all of the different points in here, the speed, the latitude and longitude, the address where it was, and then the odometer reading. We'll get to that in a minute. The other thing is you can choose different styles within the route replay. So you can have a single line. A heat map is important for some people, and you can actually have it mark the different IOs. So that is the heat map for the, and the more I zoom out, the more of a blob it becomes. You've got the heat map. You can also choose speed. So if you want to see when a vehicle was going faster or slower, and that's what the colors on here reflect. The yellow and the green reflect the speed. And then up here, you can click right out. If you want, if for some reason you wanted to go leave the replay up to get into it and go back to the map, you can always do that and leave this replay tab up. Another thing you can do is if you need to find a radio or find an address, it's super easy to do right here. It's way too many numbers. So as I start typing, it says school bus 303. And then I can find it that way. So you can search for devices here or within the map. All right, geofences. That's one that I know a lot of people have asked about. And again, this is our simulated demo system. So you can see over the course of different demos, we've put in a lot of different geofences. The way you do a geofence, very easy. So you can zoom into the level where you need to be, and you start the point there, and then you can make it any crazy shape you want or need. And then you go and click back on the beginning, and you're able to name it. You can choose your color. And this is, so the geofences you're seeing at the bottom are able to, or you're able to choose if you want to see those. And if you want to be alerted on enter or on exit or both. And then again, the fleets come into place because maybe you just want an alert for this certain fleet when they go through that geofence. So that's created, and there we go. Now, if after a while you realize that geofence isn't quite the right shape, we need to change it. I can go in and edit the geofence, and I can pull this side down if I need to, make any little adjustments I need to make sure that we're capturing the vehicles as they go through the geofence. Then you just go back to save. Within that, you can also see different alerts. So if you go up here to what we call the hamburger menu and click alerts, this is where you can see all of the different alerts that can show. It's quite a number. And again, with Sprite, there's a whole lot more alerts that you can get. So we have it set for emergencies, voice calls. Obviously, there's not going to be any voice calls since there's not really anyone on these radios, but speeding alerts, geofence alerts, so that you know when things are happening. One other big one, speaking of things happening, is a lot of times in talking with people in transportation, regardless of the industry, people will call and say, your vehicle sped past my house or was driving erratically, or the school bus didn't pick my daughter up at 8 o'clock this morning like it was supposed to. And you can actually, what you can do is perform a geo search. And so that is this target looking button right here. And so if you're on the phone with that person and you ask them, okay, well, great, where did you see this vehicle? And they say, right there. You can draw a circle around it. And then you can look in this, it's better to look at, in my opinion, it's all devices, but depending on the customer, they may know which vehicles would have been there. You do the time, or sorry, you do the date, and then you choose the time, and we'll say from 7:30 to 8:30 were any vehicles in that area. And I cheated because, again, this is a simulation, and I knew these vehicles were going to be there. So you can see, get rid of that. The GeoSearch results show you that there was one report at 7:38 and one at 7:51. Both of those buses were in that area during that time. Very useful for all types of users to be able to look back and see where that person was. Clear that. Now, I also talked about being able to do indoor positioning. We can show indoor positioning. We have a map of the art gallery there in Ottawa, and you can see on the map, these numbers are different, how many people are in those locations. Each of those points represents an iBeacon. It's an important thing to note with iBeacons is we're not going to see when someone walks all throughout this whole area. We're going to see when they're within the range of this particular iBeacon. Now you see when I hover over them, you can name the iBeacons to mean something important. So library, contemporary to, those all mean something to the security there. And then there are multiple floors there, so you can see right here, it allows you to switch from floor to floor to see the different beacons and who happens to be in there. And then down to the basement. So if we pick, let's see, we'll pick security guard 4, and we'll do a route replay for the last hour. Again, this does seamless tracking from indoors to outdoors. So a lot of times people are inside and we need to know where they are, but we need to, they also are going to go on tours around. They're going to be outside, so you want to track them there. And we can do that. And you can see over here, it shows you which iBeacon. So that symbol is for the iBeacons, and it tells you which one it was associated with. And then these show the actual GPS outside. So actually, I can go through each one, and as it moves floors, it switches automatically for you during the replay to see. And I'm going to come down here for when they actually make their way outside. And now this person is walking around the block, and then they're back into the art gallery. So kill the replay. And then, so that's the basics of the mapping. The reporting is important as well. And so reports, there's all different types of reports. So the daily summary report is one. And with this one, you can set the speed limit. I think I know the speeds. And this is your daily summary report. So it's got all sorts of different information in there. Report requested, your geofence reports, the bus stops, and then you've got the different types of reports. So obviously for our indoor location, we've got a lot of beacon reports, the different bus stops, and that's coming off the Sprite, and then the periodic. It can tell you who's the busiest, who drove the fastest, who drove the most miles in a certain day. And then this is all the records for all of the people. And then down here you can see 51 speeding alerts, all the different times they were speeding. So if we get out of that report, we can actually go into the speeding report. Again, it set the speed limit at 56. So then we go in and we can see, we can either do it by all devices or particular devices. a single device, a single fleet. So you can choose your, we'll choose fleet 1. And here's your speeding report, all the different times they were speeding. Again, since it's simulated, there's quite a lot, but where it went over 55 to 56 miles an hour. Another one we have, a couple more that are liked by a lot of people, is custom report. So now you have the ability to put whatever you want into the report. Again, you can choose the fleet, and we'll go back to all devices. You can choose it for multiple days rather than just one day, and all sorts of different things. Now, some of these we're not going to have because of the simulation, but if you wanted a GPS report to see all the GPS data for a particular day, for a particular device or a fleet, we can do that. And you can see all of the different reports. So there's 1,156 reports today for School Bus 303. And it tells you which type it is. It's a periodic. Is it a GPS request like I showed earlier when you force an update, or a bus stop? And again, the bus stop was set up by the Sprite. One other one that people really like, and actually we added because people like it, is the Geofence summary. So this one, again, decide which vehicles you want to see, which time, or which date, and put that in, and then you can see in a much easier way. And now again, some of our geofences have some crazy names because we've set them up during demos, but you can see who is in these certain areas at certain times. So one that's, there's a shopping mall on the map that I've highlighted, and you can see when they enter and when they exit. And one more thing that falls into, sort of into the reporting, is the route replay. So you've seen how you can click on the vehicle itself and do a route replay. If you want to go back further than 24 hours, this is where you go. So you go into replay. You can choose multiple days if you want. You can choose, but it's limited to a particular device. So we'll do Sim1, and you can choose, you can hit multiple days. We'll start yesterday to today. And that's a good bit of data, so it's going to take just a second to pull it all up. And then, because one thing, hit the wrong button. One thing you can do is have the IOs in there. So I have the IOs listed, and so that is plow up the IO change. So any IO change is marked on here. And you can see, you know, we're up to thousands of updates. But so you can have all of those on there. Let me clean this up. There you go. So you can go back in into here, and the track style is, we'll go back to the heat map. You can mark stops, and then I've also marked the IO, which you can see here. Now there's other things that you can mark. You can mark speeding, if ignition on and off, all sorts of things. So if you need to pull that up. So there's your heat map, and we'll go back to just a single line because it's easier to see. The other thing is this can be exported. So you can export the file as a Google Earth file or as a GPX file. So we've had people come to us and they need that for liability or to prove something in court. And that this is certainly something that will do that. I'm going to go back through my list that I have to make sure I've hit everything. But while I'm doing that, think about any questions you may have, and again, type those in so that we can answer them on here.
This is Davintri Silva from Teldio. We actually had some questions come through while Jeff was doing the presentation. One of them was if there is a demo unit that you can have in-house to show TruFleet to your customers. If you want, we can work with you to set up an in-house demo, but to make things easier, we can actually share this very same website that Jeff's been showing you and share the login with you, and we can demo it to your customer with your sales rep, whether it be Jeff or Kale from our side, or we can give it to you so that you can show it to your customer for a little time as well. Another question was if we can use Google Maps. The question was yes, up until this summer when Google actually changed some rules around how they do the pricing, and this is not something that affected just us. It's something that affected anyone who was using Google Maps. They instead of it being a free service, they started charging so that it would come to about $75 per user per month. So that's not viable. So we have OpenStreetMaps, which have just as much details as Google Maps, and you can use them there. We just for our demo site, we do have Google Maps on there just because we paid it for that, but that's something we'll be removing soon. But just going through the different map layers that we have for OpenStreetMaps right now, so they give information. Another thing we can do while we're on the topic of maps is we can bring in shape files. So if your customer has some shape files with information such as where all utility poles are, where all those cool bus stops are, if they have worked on such a shape file, which is just a layer of information, we can bring that into this map so it becomes even more personalized. Had a question, can a fleet visibility be based on a user login? Answer is yes. So TruFleet, so this is the client view. We do not charge you on a per client basis. Every client login, you have unlimited number of client logins included, and you can set each user's permissions differently, including which fleets they're supposed to see. So this is ideal for a subscriber system. We actually have a couple of very large subscriber systems that are used in TruFleet, whether it be Connect Plus or CapMax, so that they could have hundreds or thousands of users in one system, but you've divided them depending on which customer they are, and then when you create the customer login for the user, you just assign the fleets that they are supposed to view. Let's see, more questions. Someone asked, do we have pricing available for this? If so, are there different prices for different update intervals? No, there aren't. The software price remains the same, whether it's enhanced GPS or regular GPS. There is a cost for the Sprite firmware and the Sprite box, which is what will give you those 10-second reporting, 10-second updates reported at 2 to 5 minute intervals. But actual software-wise, there's no different pricing for that. For the actual pricing, you can reach out to the sales reps, and we will send you pricing for your particular system.
Yeah, I'll point out that the update interval is, again, it's all dependent on, it's a hardware. So how many data slots or data repeaters you have is going to be what dictates. So yes, there is a cost for that on the hardware side, but that's not something you would pay us. And we can certainly work with you on what's optimal.
Yeah. We have a request to review the talk groups versus repeater channel that was touched at the top. I think it's the previous slide, Jeff.
That one?
No, the one about the data slots.
Okay, yeah, slots versus. So trunked mode is where you have to have a data repeater. If you are in conventional mode, you can use just a slot on it. You can set a slot for data revert. And if you have less than 20 users, you can actually pass that over the voice channels without keeping a slot for data.
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully that answers. But if you need more clarifications, feel free to contact us. Next question: are your servers hosted locally or at your facility, or are they in a data center? Most of our deployments are actually hosted, housed locally at the customer location. So you can choose to purchase a server from us with the software, or you can provide your own server, and the application just goes on the customer network. We actually have some instances where the dealer themselves host the application. Those carrier network deployments that I mentioned over there, the server is actually at the dealer location, and we connect to the radio network via IP, and the dealer themselves does the hosting. We also provide a hosted model where there's monthly pricing as well, but we find that the other two options are what a lot of customers want. They want their data local. Am I right there, Jeff?
Yes,
yeah.
Those are definitely the two most popular options.
Yeah, correct. I have a question saying, can we have satellite view? That is something we lost with the loss of Google Maps, but currently we are in the process of finding another mapping solution that won't cost $75 per user per month or anywhere near it, so that we can bring satellite view back to you. Another question: what is everything that the Sprite box will log as far as input? So the Sprite box itself, it has 3 inputs. Actually, I'm bringing up a document here, so I'm accurate in that. Yes, sorry, three inputs that you can wire a vehicle into. So it could be something like a door open, door close. That would take 1 input. It could be a plow up, plow down. That would take another input. Those are things that are tracked via Sprite box. Plus, since you have a mobile radio that has 5 radio telemetry events, those can also be inputs. But of course, you would take 1 for if it's plow up, plow down. In terms of it being on the radio, 1 input will be taken for up, another input will be taken for down. We do the contrail events that we track. So we can track, in addition to those IO events and actual GPS, we can track things like when the GPS fix was found, when it was lost, immediately reported when someone got in an emergency. So in both the Sprite firmware and the Sprite box, we could set it so that, sure, send us your GPS intervals every 10 seconds, every 2 minutes, but if there's an emergency, send it immediately. So if someone does go into emergency, we're not waiting for the next 2-minute or the 5-minute interval to receive that. You can set specific events to be reported immediately. We also have another list, a full list of all the contrail events that we track. Just when someone stops for X number of minutes, when they start moving, when the radio's on, when the radio's off, when they're speeding, when they take a turn. So those are all things that you can track with the Sprite firmware and box. Does the Sprite unit interface to the turbo radio through the accessory connector? How much more cost per unit with Sprite? So I'll answer the first part of it. So we do actually provide a cable that actually connects to the back of the radio and then to the Sprite unit, and then all the wiring that you need. So yes, it does connect through the it connects to the back connector, not the front accessory port. And in terms of cost, please contact sales@teldio.com. And they will send you unit pricing about Sprite. So I think the TruFleet web server can be at the customer location. Yes, yeah. So the TruFleet web server, it's just our application itself has a web server built into it. So when you run it, you pick the port that you want to run the application on. Most people choose port 80. So once it's set up, any customers who want to view the map data, they just go to that IP address and they use their given login, and they'll be able to view the map. If the customer wants, especially when it comes to the school bus tracking solution, you don't want parents logging into an IP address. You'd want to make it a public domain, public IP. So you would have something like bustracking.schoolwebaddress.com that users can log into. But even in that case, the server can be hosted locally at the customer location. Yeah, these are great questions. Yeah, so I think that's all the questions. I will go through the list to make sure that I didn't miss anything. Send us any more if you have any more questions. Yeah, I think that's all the questions. But if you have any further questions, you can always direct them to sales@teldio.com or the phone number that's on the screen right now, 1-855-743-1333, extension 3.
All right, thank you, Dee. That's why we had Dee on, because she answers those way better than I do. But those are great questions, everyone. Thank you. That's love seeing how involved everyone was in this, and thanks for attending today. Again, this has been recorded, so if you want to go back and watch it just because it was great, feel free. Or if you want to share it with your customers or colleagues, you can do that as well. And if there are no other questions, we'll wrap up. And again, thank you for attending today, and look for our next webinar next month.